remembered the day her world ended. She was standing in the great archive of her people, surrounded by thousands of years of collected knowledge, when the sky turned dark with warships. They had no word for invasion. They had never needed one. They were a small and gentle species. They stood no taller than human children, with thin limbs and large dark eyes that reflected light like pools of still water. Their skin carried bioluminescent markings that shifted color with their emotions: blue for sadness, red for fear, gold for joy. They had not glowed gold in a very long time. For 10,000 years they had served the dominion of. They were not warriors. They were not builders or farmers or soldiers. They were keepers of memory. They maintained the archives, preserved the histories, and asked for nothing but peace in return. They had allowed them to exist because they were useful. The moment they stopped being useful, they decided they should stop existing. The broadcast came without warning. A cold voice spoke in the harsh language of the Dominion. Your species is deemed redundant. You have 3 rotations to vacate your world. Any who remain will be cleansed. Did not understand at first. She stood frozen in the archive, her markings flickering between confused violet and frightened red. Around her, the other archivists began to panic. Some wept. Some screamed. Some simply sat down and stared at nothing, their glow fading to gray. 3 days. They had 3 days to leave everything they had ever known. The evacuation was chaos. They had no fleet. They had a handful of old cargo ships used for transporting supplies between stations. These vessels were never meant for deep space travel. They were never meant to carry passengers, but they had no choice. They crammed themselves into every available space. Families pressed together in cargo holds designed for crates. Children cried in the darkness. The elderly sat in silence, knowing they would not survive the journey. Found herself aboard a ship called the Wandering Hope. The name felt like a cruel joke. There were 400 packed into a space meant for 50. The air was thin and stale. The lights flickered constantly. The engine made sounds that no engine should make. On the 3rd day, the warships began firing on those who had not yet escaped. Watched through a tiny porthole as her burned. The archives, the temples, the gardens where she had played as a child, all of it reduced to ash and memory. The convoy fled into the void. 27 ships carrying 3 million souls. They had nowhere to go. At first there was hope. Surely someone would help them. The galaxy was vast and filled with civilizations. They had never harmed anyone. They had served faithfully, for someone would show them mercy. No one did. The first world they approached was Prime, home to a species that had once praised them for their careful preservation of poetry. They refused to answer their hails. When the convoy lingered too long, patrol ships fired warning shots across their bows. The second world was, they listened to their pleas for asylum. Then they demanded payment. They had nothing to pay with. They told them to leave. The third world was 4. They were afraid of the Dominion. They begged them to go away before they learned they had spoken. They said they were sorry. Their sorrow did not feed hungry children. Weeks passed, then months. The convoy drifted through uncharted space, running from nothing and toward nothing. Ships began to fail. The gentle dream lost power and went dark. The last morning suffered an engine explosion that killed everyone aboard. The quiet song simply vanished one night, never to be seen again. Food ran out. They had brought what little they could carry, and it was not enough. They rationed. Then they rationed more. Then there was nothing left to ration. Watched her people grow thin and weak. She watched elders give their portions to children and then slip away quietly in the night. She watched children stop asking when they would find a new home. Disease came next. The ships were overcrowded and the air recyclers were failing. A fever spread through the holds, killing the old and the young with equal cruelty. There were no medicines. There were no doctors left alive who knew how to help. They could only watch and wait and hope. Stopped hopping after the 4th month. Hope was too heavy to carry. She focused instead on survival. Wake up. Drink the thin broth that passed for food. Check on the children in her section. Sleep. Repeat. Do not think about tomorrow. Tomorrow might not come. By the 6th month, only the Wandering Hope remained functional. The other surviving ships had been abandoned, their passengers transferred to the last vessel that still had power. 2,000, where once there had been 3 million. The rest were gone, dead from hunger or disease or despair or the cold emptiness of space. Sat in a corner of the cargo hold, her markings dim and gray. She had not glowed in weeks. She had forgotten how. Around her, the other survivors huddled in silence. No one spoke anymore. There was nothing left to say. Then the sensor officer called out in a weak and raspy voice. He had detected a signal, a beacon from an unknown system. Someone was out there. Felt nothing. She had been disappointed too many times. Every signal had led to rejection. Every hope had turned to ash. This would be no different. But the captain ordered them to change course anyway. They had no other options. Their food would last another week at most. Their power would fail within days. If this new signal brought rejection, they would simply drift until they died. At least they would die trying. The system was small and unremarkable. A yellow star with 8 planets and a scattering of moons. The signal came from the 3rd planet, a blue and green world covered in water and clouds. The species that lived there called themselves humanity, had never heard of them. They were young, barely a few centuries into space travel. They had no standing in the galactic community. They owed the nothing. Watched the blue planet grow larger in the viewport. Her markings remained gray. She was too tired and too broken to feel anything but exhaustion. Whatever happened next, she was ready for it to be over. She did not know that her life was about to change forever. She did not know that this small and unremarkable species would become the first in the galaxy to truly see her people. She did not know about the promise they would make. She only knew that she was very, very tired. And for the first time in 6 months, someone was answering their call. Commander Jake was having a quiet shift aboard the Earth vessel Horizon. The patrol route through the outer system was usually uneventful. Pirates rarely came this far out, and alien contact was rare enough that most crew members went their entire careers without experiencing it. Jake was drinking his 3rd cup of coffee and thinking about what he would cook for dinner when Lieutenant Amy spoke up from her sensor station. "Sir, I have something strange on the scope." Jake set down his coffee. Amy was not the type to call out false alarms. If she said something was strange, it was worth paying attention to. "What have you got?" Amy frowned at her display, her fingers moving quickly across the controls. Multiple contacts. They read as ships, but the energy signatures are all wrong. Minimal power output. Failing life support on at least half of them. She looked up, her face troubled. "Sir, I think they are dying out there." Jake was on his feet before she finished speaking. "Open a channel, all frequencies." The response came in broken fragments. The universal translator struggled with the alien language, piecing together meaning from sounds it had never encountered before. But the message was clear enough. "Please, we are dying. We have nowhere to go. Please do not turn us away." Jake did not hesitate. He had joined the fleet to protect people. It did not matter that these people were not human. They were in trouble and he could help. That was enough. "All hands, this is the commander. We have a rescue operation. Medical teams to the shuttle bay. Engineering, I need every functional shuttle prepped and ready. We are going to bring these people home." The crew of the Horizon responded with speed and purpose. Within 30 minutes, the first shuttles launched toward the drifting convoy. Jake led the mission personally. He wanted to see the situation with his own eyes. Nothing could have prepared him for what he found. The alien ship was dark and cold. Emergency lighting cast weak red shadows across corridors filled with huddled bodies. Jake could not tell at first glance which were alive and which were dead. The smell hit him next. Recycled air thick with sickness and decay. The sharp bite of desperation. Then he saw them clearly for the first time. Small beings, barely reaching his chest, with thin limbs and large dark eyes. Their skin carried faint patterns that glowed weakly in the darkness. Most of the patterns were gray or faded entirely. A few pulsed with a dull and fearful red. A child cowered in a corner, arms wrapped around its knees. Corporal Ben Hayes, one of the medics, approached slowly and knelt down to the child's level. The little alien flinched away, pressing itself against the wall. Ben held up his hands, showing they were empty. He kept his voice soft and calm. "Hey there, I'm not going to hurt you, see? I have food, clean water, you are safe now." The child stared at him with those huge dark eyes. Its markings flickered uncertainly, shifting from gray to a pale and trembling blue. It did not understand his words, but it understood his tone. It understood that this strange creature was not raising a hand to strike. Jake moved through the ship with his team, cataloging the survivors and directing the evacuation. The numbers were grim. Of the 400 beings this ship had once carried, fewer than 200 remained alive. Many of those were in critical condition. They needed food and water and medical care that the Horizon was not equipped to provide. Jake opened a channel to Earth Command. "This is Commander of the Horizon. We have encountered an alien refugee convoy in the outer system. Approximately 2,000 survivors in critical condition. They need immediate humanitarian assistance. I am requesting emergency supplies and transport vessels." The response came within the hour. Earth was sending help. Watched the humans work. She did not understand what was happening. In her experience, the powerful species of the galaxy took what they wanted and discarded what they did not need. The Dominion had taught her that lesson well. She expected demands. She expected conditions. She expected to learn the price of survival. But the humans simply helped. They carried the sick to their own medical bays without asking permission. They distributed food and water without asking for payment. They spoke in gentle voices and moved with careful hands and never once raised a weapon in threat. A human woman wrapped a thermal blanket around shoulders. The woman smiled and said something in her strange language. The translator in his ear struggled to keep up. "You must be cold. This will help. Are you hungry? We have soup." Stared at her. The woman was tall and strong, with short dark hair and kind eyes. She could have crushed without effort. Instead, she offered soup. "Why?" asked. Her voice was hoarse from months of disuse. "Why do you help us? We have nothing to give you. We are weak. We are useless." The woman's smile faded, replaced by something fierce and sad. "Nobody is useless, and you do not have to give us anything. You needed help. We can help. That is all that matters." Did not know how to respond. The concept was alien to her in a way that transcended species. Help without payment. Kindness without expectation. She had read about such things in the old archives, in stories and myths from before the Dominion. She had never believed they were real. Commander Jake found her later, sitting alone in a corner of the shuttle bay. He approached slowly, giving her time to see him coming. He did not want to startle her. These people had clearly been through enough. "Hello," he said, crouching down so he was not looming over her. "I am Jake. We are going to take you somewhere safe. Is there anything you need right now?" Looked at him for a long moment. This human had power. He commanded a warship. He could do anything he wanted to her people, and there was nothing they could do to stop him. And yet he knelt before her like an equal and asked what she needed. Her markings shifted. For the first time in months, a faint golden light flickered across her skin. It was weak and uncertain, barely visible in the harsh shuttle bay lighting. But it was there. "I do not understand you," she said quietly. "I do not understand any of this." Jake smiled. It was a warm expression, full of genuine kindness. "You do not have to understand right now. You just have to know that you are safe. We will figure out the rest together." He stood and offered her his hand. Looked at it, this strange human gesture of trust. Slowly, hesitantly, she reached out and took it. His grip was firm but gentle. He helped her to her feet and did not let go until she was steady. Then he led her toward the shuttle that would take her to the horizon, and from there to Earth. Behind her, the wandering Hope drifted empty and silent, its long journey finally over. Ahead, something new was beginning. Did not know what it was yet, but for the first time in 6 months, she thought she might want to find out. Earth was not ready for 3 million refugees. The problem was that only 2,000 had survived the journey. The rest were ghosts now, memories carried in the hearts of those who remained. But 2,000 traumatized aliens still presented a challenge that humanity had never faced before. The response surprised everyone, including the humans themselves. Volunteers came from every nation on the planet. Doctors flew in from hospitals across 6 continents. Teachers offered to help the children learn. Counselors specialized in trauma stepped forward to provide care. Ordinary people with no special skills simply showed up and asked what they could do to help. They brought food and clothing and blankets and toys for the children. They brought kindness in quantities that they had never seen. The orbital station Haven became the first home for the refugees. It was a massive structure originally built for scientific research, hastily converted into living quarters. The rooms were small and plain, but they were clean and warm and safe. For beings who had spent 6 months dying slowly in the cold darkness of space, it felt like paradise. Was assigned to a housing unit on the station's 3rd level. Her neighbors were other survivors, all of them broken in different ways. Some had lost entire families. Some had watched their children starve. Some had given up hope so completely that they did not know how to find it again. Her human liaison was a young woman named Sophie Grant. Sophie was barely 23 years old by human counting, with curly brown hair and a smile that seemed too bright for the darkness around them. She visited every day, bringing small gifts and conversation and a warmth that felt almost overwhelming. "I brought you something," Sophie said one morning, holding out a small object wrapped in colorful paper. "It is called a present. You open it." Took the package carefully, turning it over in her thin fingers. She had seen the children receive similar packages, tearing into them with something approaching joy. But she did not understand the purpose. "Why do you give me things? I have done nothing to earn them." Sophie's smile flickered with something sad. "You do not have to earn presents. That is the point. People give them because they want to, not because they have to." Opened the package slowly. Inside was a small book with a worn cover. The pages were filled with human writing that she could not read. "It is poetry," Sophie explained. "About hope, finding light in dark places. I thought you might like it. I can read it to you if you want. Help you learn our language." Held the book against her chest. Her markings flickered gold for just a moment before fading back to gray. "I do not understand why you do this. We are strangers. We are not your people. The Dominion said we were worthless. They said no one would want us." Sophie's expression hardened. It was the first time had seen anger on her gentle face. "The Dominion sounds like monsters, and I do not care what they said. You are people. You deserve kindness. Everyone does." Not all humans agreed with this sentiment. Learned this quickly. She saw the news broadcasts that Sophie tried to hide from her. There were protests in some human cities. People carrying signs and shouting that Earth should take care of its own first. Politicians argued about costs and resources and whether humanity could afford such generosity. But the majority held firm. Laws were passed to protect the refugees. Resources were allocated. They were offered something they had never expected: citizenship, a chance to become part of human society, a future. 6 months after their arrival, a ceremony was held in the Great Hall of Haven Station. Every surviving was present, along with hundreds of humans who had helped them. Sat in the front row, Sophie beside her. She did not know what to expect. Secretary of State Cole stood at the podium. He was a tall man with gray hair and a serious face, the kind of human who clearly held great power. felt her markings flicker red with instinctive fear. Powerful beings had never brought good news for her people. But when he spoke, his voice was not cold or demanding. It was warm and heavy with emotion. 6 months ago, a convoy of ships appeared in our system. They carried the survivors of a genocide. People who had been cast out of their homes, stripped of everything they owned, left to die in the emptiness of space because someone decided they were no longer useful. He paused, looking out at the assembly. His eyes seemed to find every face in the crowd. You came to us broken and afraid. You expected to be turned away. You expected to be used or exploited or hurt. I understand why. The galaxy has been cruel to you in ways that I cannot fully comprehend, but I want you to understand something about humanity. He leaned forward, his voice growing stronger. We are not the Dominion. We do not measure the worth of a person by what they can do for us. We do not discard people who cannot serve our purposes. We believe that every thinking being has value simply because they exist, and we protect those who cannot protect themselves. The hall was completely silent. Felt Sophie take her hand and squeeze it gently. You are under humanity's protection now, continued. And I make you this promise, on behalf of every nation of Earth, on behalf of every human being who has a heart in their chest and a conscience in their soul. He stood straight and tall, his voice ringing through the hall like a bell. No one hurts you again, not while we draw breath, not while there is a single human left to stand between you and those who would do you harm. This is our promise to you, and we do not break our promises. The hall erupted. Humans rose to their feet, applauding and cheering, and among them something remarkable happened. Their markings began to glow, faint at first, then brighter and brighter until the entire assembly blazed with golden light. Felt tears running down her face. She did not know when she had started crying. Beside her, Sophie was crying too, still holding her hand. Do you understand now? Sophie asked through her tears. Do you understand why we do this? Looked at her, this strange young human who had shown her more kindness in 6 months than she had received in her entire life before. Her markings blazed gold, brighter than they had ever been. I am beginning to, she said softly. I am beginning to. Outside the windows of Haven Station, Earth hung blue and beautiful against the stars. Somewhere down there, 3 million humans had just promised to protect 2,000 strangers. And for the first time since the Dominion had destroyed her world, believed that tomorrow might be worth seeing. The Dominion of learned about the 18 months after the refugees arrived on Earth. A trading vessel passing through neutral space picked up a broadcast about the strange alien species that humanity had welcomed into their society. The news traveled fast. Within weeks, it reached the ears of the High Command. The Dominion was not pleased. They were supposed to be dead. They were supposed to have drifted into the void and vanished, a problem solved through elegant neglect. The fact that they had survived was an embarrassment. The fact that another species had taken them in was an insult. The fact that this species was young and primitive and had no standing in galactic politics made the insult even worse. They did not tolerate insults. A diplomatic vessel arrived at the edge of the Sol system on a cold morning in January. It was a massive ship, bristling with weapons that it was not supposed to carry. The message it broadcast was simple and arrogant. Attention, primitive species designated humanity. You are harboring property belonging to the Dominion of. The beings you call are escaped servants. You will return them immediately. Failure to comply will result in the destruction of your civilization. You have 1 rotation to respond. Earth's response came from Admiral Santos, commander of the United Earth Defense Fleet. She was a small woman with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had fought pirates and rebels, and once faced down an alien raiding party with nothing but a damaged cruiser and sheer determination. She was not impressed by threats. This is Admiral Santos of the United Earth Defense Fleet. They are not property. They are refugees under our protection. We do not surrender people to those who would harm them. If you want them, you will have to come through us." The ambassador laughed. It was an ugly sound full of contempt. "You are a primitive species. You have barely learned to leave your own system. The Dominion has crushed 1,000 civilizations more advanced than yours. Your defiance is amusing but meaningless. Surrender or watch your world burn." Admiral Santos smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Then come and try." The Dominion sent a battle fleet of 200 warships. They expected easy conquest. Humanity was young and inexperienced. Their ships were small and their weapons were crude. The commanders calculated that the entire campaign would take less than a week. They were wrong. Humanity had spent its entire history fighting itself. Wars over land and resources and ideology had taught them lessons that peaceful species never learned. They knew how to build weapons that killed efficiently. They knew how to organize armies and coordinate attacks and fight with desperate fury when their backs were against the wall. They knew how to turn every disadvantage into a weapon. And they had something else, something the Dominion had never encountered. They had a reason to fight that went beyond survival. Every human ship carried the same message painted on its hull. Every pilot wore the same words on their flight suit. Every soldier had the phrase etched into their heart: "No one hurts them again." The Battle of Saul lasted 4 days. It was the bloodiest conflict in human history. They came in fast and confident, expecting the human fleet to scatter. Instead, the humans met them head-on. Small human fighters swarmed around the massive warships, targeting engines and weapon systems with surgical precision. Human destroyers launched missiles that they had never seen, warheads designed to penetrate shields and detonate inside enemy hulls. Commander Jake led a squadron of assault shuttles in a direct attack on the flagship. The mission was supposed to be suicide. Everyone knew the odds. They went anyway. "This is to all units," he broadcast as they approached the enemy vessel. "Remember why we are here. Remember who we are protecting. No one hurts them again." His shuttle breached the flagship's hull, and his Marines poured into corridors designed for beings twice their size. They fought hand to hand in the darkness, using every weapon they had: knives and fists and sheer human stubbornness. Jake took a wound to his shoulder that should have killed him. He kept fighting until the flagship's bridge was secured and its commander was dead. On Earth, watched the battle unfold on news broadcasts. Sophie sat beside her, holding her hand so tightly that it hurt. The humans around them were silent, their faces pale with fear and hope and something else: pride. The survivors had gathered in the common room of Haven Station. Their markings flickered with every update: red for fear, blue for sorrow, and something new, something fierce, a color that had never seen in her own people before. "They are dying for us," she whispered. "They are dying for people they barely know." Sophie did not look away from the screen. Her voice was steady despite the tears on her face. "That is what family does." On the 3rd day, the tide turned. Human reinforcements arrived from the outer colonies. Fresh ships and fresh crews who had traveled at maximum speed to join the fight. They hit the flank with everything they had. By the 4th day, the Dominion fleet was broken. 167 ships drifted as burning wreckage. The rest fled into hyperspace, carrying tales of a species that fought like nothing they had ever seen. A species that would not surrender. A species that kept its promises. Admiral Santos broadcast a final message to the retreating fleet. "Tell your masters what happened here. Tell them that Earth protects its own. And tell them that if they ever come back, we will be waiting." The cost was terrible: 47 human ships destroyed, 18,000 human lives lost. Jake spent 3 weeks in a medical bay, unconscious and fighting for survival. But he lived. Most of them lived, and they were safe. When the victory was announced, the survivors gathered in the common room and did something they had not done since before the exile. They sang. an ancient song of gratitude and grief and fierce, overwhelming love. Their markings blazed gold and white and colors that had no name. Sang with them. Her voice was hoarse and broken, but she sang anyway. She sang for the humans who had fought and died for strangers. She sang for Jake lying wounded in his medical bay. She sang for Sophie Grant, who had never let go of her hand. She sang because, for the first time in her life, someone had kept their promise. No one would hurt them again. The defeat at Sol sent shockwaves through the galaxy. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Dominion had been beaten. Not by a mighty empire or an ancient civilization, but by a young species that most had never heard of. The news spread faster than light itself, carried by traders and travelers and whispered in the dark corners of 100 worlds. There was a species out there that protected the weak, a species that fought for strangers, a species that kept its promises. The first refugees arrived 6 months after the battle. They called themselves a reptilian species covered in beautiful iridescent scales. The Dominion had hunted them nearly to extinction because those scales were valuable. Wealthy wore them as jewelry. They had fled from system to system for generations, always running, never safe. They came to Earth with nothing but the clothes on their backs and fear in their eyes. They expected to be turned away. They expected to be used. Instead, humanity welcomed them just as they had welcomed the. "You are safe here," the humans told them. "No one hurts you again." More came after that. A species of gentle giants exiled for refusing to serve as slave labor in Dominion mines. Whose only crime was existing on a planet rich in minerals that the wanted. The pale wanderers who had no name for themselves anymore, because the Dominion had taken even that from them. Each time humanity's answer was the same: welcome, safety, protection, a promise kept. Watched her world transform. The small community on Haven Station grew into something larger. Other species joined them. Different beings with different histories and different traumas, all bound together by a common thread. They had been hurt, they had been broken, and they had found a home among the humans. She became a translator first, helping new refugees navigate their strange new world. Then she became a counselor, using her own experiences to help others heal. Finally, she became an ambassador, representing in the newly formed Galactic Refugee Coalition. It was a grand name for what was really just a collection of survivors trying to build something better. But it grew. Year by year it grew. 10 years after the Battle of Sol, stood before an assembly of 12 species in the Great Hall of the Coalition headquarters. She was older now, her markings deeper and more complex than they had been in her youth. She had learned to speak human languages fluently. She had learned their customs and their jokes and their strange, beautiful traditions. She had become, in many ways, one of them. Sophie Grant stood in the audience. She was Ambassador Grant now, Earth's official representative to the Coalition. Her curly brown hair had threads of gray in it, and laugh lines had formed around her eyes. She still smiled too brightly for the darkness around her. She still brought small gifts for no reason at all. "I want to tell you a story," began, her voice carrying through the silent hall. 10 years ago, my people were nothing. We were weak and broken and dying in the void. The galaxy had discarded us. We had given up hope. She paused, letting the words settle. And then we found humanity. They did not ask what we could give them. They did not calculate our worth in resources or labor or strategic value. They simply saw that we were suffering, and they chose to help. Her markings began to glow, soft gold light spreading across her skin. The Dominion believes that strength means the right to dominate. They believe that power exists to crush the weak and take what you want. They taught us this lesson for 10,000 years. They taught us that kindness was weakness and compassion was foolishness, and hope was for those too stupid to see the truth. She looked out at the assembly, representatives of 12 species, each one with their own story of loss and survival. each one saved by a species that had no obligation to help them. Humanity taught me a different truth. They taught me that real strength is the choice to protect, to shelter, to stand between the helpless and those who would harm them and say, "I will not let you pass." They taught me that kindness is not weakness. It is the most powerful force in the universe. In the audience, Sophie was crying. She always cried at speeches. She said it was because she was proud. Suspected it was also because humans leaked water from their eyes whenever they felt strong emotions, which seemed to happen constantly. "We are building something new here," continued. "A coalition of the broken and the lost. A family of strangers bound together by shared suffering and shared hope. And at the heart of it all stands humanity, keeping the promise they made to us 10 years ago." She raised her voice, letting it ring through the hall. "No one hurts us again. That is what they told us. And they meant it. They fought for us. They bled for us. They died for us. And they will continue to do so for as long as there are humans left to fight." The assembly rose to their feet. 12 species, hundreds of beings, all applauding together. The sound filled the hall like thunder. After the speech, and Sophie walked together through the observation deck of the station. Below them, Earth turned slowly in the darkness, blue and green and beautiful. Ships from a dozen species moved through the space around it, coming and going on missions of trade and exploration and rescue. "Do you think it will last?" asked. "This coalition, this hope. The galaxy is vast and the Dominion is still powerful. They will not forget what happened here." Sophie considered the question for a long moment. "I do not know," she admitted. "History is full of broken promises and failed dreams. There is no guarantee that what we have built will survive." She turned to look at, her eyes bright with something that was not quite tears. "But I know this. As long as there are people willing to fight for what is right, there is a chance. As long as someone is willing to stand up and say no, you will not hurt them, there is hope. And that is enough for me." Smarkings shifted to a warm and contented amber. "It is enough for me as well." They stood together in silence, two friends from different worlds watching the stars. Somewhere out there in the darkness, other refugees were hearing the stories. Other exiles were learning about the promise. Other broken souls were daring to hope for the first time. And somewhere, on a dozen different worlds, the Dominion was beginning to understand that the galaxy had changed. There was a species out there that protected the weak. And they kept their promises.